What are your worst roommate stories? Story 1. I had a roommate who absolutely refused to buy toilet paper. After weeks of her stealing ours, the other three of us started hiding it so she would be forced to buy her own. Instead, she started taking heaps of napkins from restaurants and stealing rolls of our paper towels. One night we all went out to dinner, came home, and the entire basement was flooded because she backed up the toilet with God only knows how much shit that shouldn't ever be flushed. That, and she would keep piles of old food laying around her room, never did laundry, most disgusting human being I've ever met. Story 2. This is actually about my friend's roommate, but that's hardly important. My friend's roommate comes stumbling into their dorm room, freshman year. It's blatantly obvious that she is drunk beyond reason. She starts shouting, "I need to go to the bathroom," which wakes up my friend. She sees her roommate just staggering back and forth through the doorway. She stayed in bed because she really didn't know how to react. Her roommate returns through the door once more and reiterates that she needs to go to the bathroom. Before her roommate had left to go to a party, she had placed her white Mac laptop on her chair by her desk. The rationale here is that we believe the white from the laptop on the seat made the chair look like a porcelain load throne in the mind of her drunken roommate. So she approaches the chair, pulls down her pants, and sits on her laptop. My friend braces herself because this situation can only go one way. As she braced for impact, her roommate releases a sigh of relief that unfortunately is synchronized with the release of her bladder and bowels. Despite her laptop being covered in piss and shit, her roommate denies that this ever happened. Story 3. Circa 2001. It was my first apartment and I wasn't a good judge of roommate character back then. I was working at a welding shop and had befriended this big Mexican guy after driving him home from work enough to start hanging out at his house after work for a few beers and his mom's excellent biscuits and gravy she'd make for us. Naturally, we thought it would be a good idea to roommate at my place to cut down on expense. Little did I know, he was one of those drinkers that black out and destroy everything. Each day after work was him with a case of beer and getting in arguments with kids in Yahoo chat rooms over a mic until he would pass out. It escalated. He quit going to work and I'd come home with him passed out, vomit all over the floors, piss in the corners, half-eaten pizza face down on the couch, the works. I started telling him he needed to leave but he wasn't hearing it. Eventually he got arrested for something and ended up in jail. I was free. For a while. He got out and I woke to banging on my door. I didn't let him in. His mom collected all his things when he got locked up. Fast forward to recently, I'd been overseas for 6 years and moved back to my home state afterward, and recently stumbled across his Facebook page after not having seen or heard from him in 13 years. We talked. He's doing really well now, training to be an addiction counselor, and I'm happy for him. Story 4. I lived with a magician. Of the many moments, the odd one that I remember vividly was when he was about to leave the country for near about 2 months. Before he left, hours before going the airport, he filled the freezer with whole chickens. Then got really upset when we ate them to free up space. Story 5. I had to work abroad for 3 months. I came home to discover the bathroom light bulb had blown just after I left. Roomie felt she couldn't change it herself, so called an electrician. Electrician laughed at her and told her she could save a fortune and do it herself. She still hadn't done it by the time I got back. Needless to say, I fixed it in about 5 minutes. It would have been sooner, but I couldn't stop chuckling at the thought of her shitting in the dark for months. Story 6. Probably the girl who dated the homeless drug dealer. He ended up moving in, without my permission, and started dealing out of our apartment, definitely without my permission. He also had the rankest boots I've ever smelled that he would leave in the living room. Story 7. I had a roommate who would attempt to leave unjustified scathing, passive-aggressive notes for just everyone, our apartment neighbors, cars parked outside, and even our landlady. The kind of notes with overly polite language, underlines, and randomly capitalized words. Always written in red marker. Always rude enough to get the shit beaten out of her. Always signed from both of us. I spent that year following her around and removing the notes as quickly and quietly as possible. Story 8. So I have to leave notes, but it is only because she sleeps like 20 hours a day and I rarely see her face to face. But they aren't passive-aggressive. Thought one was just plain aggressive. My boyfriend and her both leave trash on the counter beside the trash can instead of throwing it away, so I left a note on the counter that said, "This isn't the trash can. Don't be lazy." I'm not proud of that one. Story 9. My first roommate at college was a girl who had some severe issues. She was bulimic and would cut herself. She never talked to me and I only deduced these things by finding the bloody tissues under her bed, and having just lived with my brother who was suicidal and self-harmed a lot, and also following the trail of vomit smell to the closet where she apparently kept it. Fuck if I know why, since we had a suite and our own attached bathroom. She would also bring up containers of food to leave out to make it look like she was eating. When I talked to the RA about this and they forced her to speak with a therapist, she threatened to smother me in my sleep and I was told it was in my best interest to move out. My first year at college was not fun, sad face. Story 10. The worst story I have is just really creepy. She was a great roommate but I couldn't sleep right for a month after. So it's literally the first night we are sleeping in the same room, so things are already a little awkward since we only know each other's names. But night falls and we go to sleep. I wake up to the sound of her yelling, "No, no, 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 no," and then she flings all of her blankets off of her bed and onto the floor. At this point I'm freaked out, so I ask if she's okay and she doesn't reply. Instead she sits up and looks around, sees the window and kind of whispers, "Not the window." Then she stands up and walks to the window. At this point I realize she must be sleepwalking, or crazy. She gets to the window, grabs the lock with both hands and is locking and unlocking the window over and over again while whispering to herself. She never opened it, but after about 3 minutes of that she lets go and says, "That'll do." And then starts walking back to her bed, but when she was passing by my bed she stopped and turned to face me. Then she just stood there I hope, staring at me for a good 2 minutes. Then she started whispering to herself again, walked past her bed to the door, dragged her hand down the middle of it, turned around and walked to her bed and went back to sleep. I was terrified, but I never told her about it. She never did it again. Story 11. I made the mistake of living with friends, and it all went to shit. They were all slobs and I got really tired of cleaning up after them, but that wasn't the worst of it. No, the worst of it was my one friend's boyfriend. You see, she had previously been in a bad relationship, and all of us promised we would say if we thought she was in another bad one. Did that work? LOL, no. Everyone hated her new boyfriend, but I was the only one that flat out told her she was being used and she should get out. I became enemy number one, as suddenly everyone else was so supportive of her relationship. They plotted ways to get back at me. I actually overheard them saying what they were going to do around the apartment to piss me off. Joke's on her. They're divorced now, and one of the others in a spiraling to hell relationship. The one I remained friends with, she didn't plot, she was just a slob, is still contently married. I did get a half-hearted apology one time, but it was cut off when I said I wasn't sorry for anything. Story 12. I lived with a roommate who was a complete and total narcissist. It was a $1,500 per mo apartment, 3-bedroom in a nice part of town, that should have been $500 a person, but he was a lazy shit and maybe contributed $150 of that. His dumb twat girlfriend wasn't much better, contributing about the same amount per month, but she was at least more pleasant to talk to. I lived with them for about 6 months and paid the $1,200 I was paying to cover the rent because I didn't want my credit to take the hit that would result from an eviction. The whole time they were going out to eat and wining and dining each other. Meanwhile I never could do anything because I was burning up all my cash just trying to cover the rent. Of course I would talk to the dude to say, "Man, this can't continue, it's stressing me the fuck out, I can't afford to buy food most of the time," but since he was a piece of shit narcissist, he would turn the argument around to somehow make it about how ungrateful a person I was. The end finally came when I spoke with the leasing office people and explained that while I loved the apartment, I was the only one who was really giving the property managers any real money and the situation was untenable. I also said I would love to continue doing business with them, possibly with a smaller apartment, but I was locked into my lease and couldn't afford to pay an early termination fee because these assholes I lived with were sucking me dry. They looked up the paperwork and said, "Well, it looks like only piece of shit filled out lease paperwork, so you have no legal obligation to pay the rent. Is that so?" I responded. I thought for a few moments and then said to the agent, "You should probably get eviction paperwork ready for next month. I have no intention of continuing to fund their lavish lifestyle. What other units do you have?" I went back to the apartment and began packing. One day they came home to see that my bedroom was empty and my car was gone. They started packing like crazy for 3 days, having to throw a lot of it away because they were going to get locked out before they could get it all. On the second day, the power was turned off, because it was in my name at the old apartment, and now that I had my own place I wasn't about to pay for the power in 2 different places. So they had to frantically pack, in the sweltering July heat in total darkness. Fuck those people. Story 13. Well, here is my ex-roommate story. Dated a girl for a while, she moved in and we ended up breaking up. I let her stay and move into one of the upstairs bedrooms because I made the mistake of feeling sorry for her. Fast forward a few years, yes, I'm a huge pushover and way too forgiving of people. I think she finally broke me of that. And I finally had to kick her ass out. It started small over the years, with her just being a general slob. However, she had the upstairs of the house more or less to herself. Large bedroom, her own full bathroom, nobody ever went up there to bother her. She also had a pet rabbit. I liked rabbits, they're cute and adorable. The rabbit, however, was not taken care of. She went back to Arizona for Christmas to visit family and asked me to watch the rabbit. Sure, no problem. I go up to check on the rabbit, give it food, water, clean cage, etc., and the upstairs looks like a crack house. There is trash everywhere, just piles of dirty dishes and food wrappers, just general trash. The bathroom looked like it had never been cleaned at all. Just layers upon layers of makeup residue and hair and trash. Ugh. And worse, the rabbit's cage was this tiny thing designed for small rabbits and was too small for this one since she never let the rabbit out of the cage. And the entire cage was filled with rabbit crap. The nails on the rabbit were long enough you knew they hadn't been taken care of in a while. I was horrified. But, me being stupid, didn't immediately pick up a phone and bitch her out and tell her to keep her bags packed when she got back. No, I was stupid. I cleaned up upstairs, went out, built the rabbit a new much larger cage and took care of it. When she got back I told her flat out it wouldn't happen again. Fast forward a few months and the rabbit is put for being sick. She starts posting on Facebook about how sad she was, etc. I sat there thinking, bitch, you didn't take care of it, why are you sad? I even offered to help her take the rabbit cage down after it happened. She declined. Fast forward again and I'm wondering why all of a sudden the house is crawling with bugs. I start seeing ants and roaches in larger and larger numbers. Not cool. Then I start noticing an odor in the house, something rotten. I'm thinking something got in one of the attics and died. A squirrel or a mouse or something, and that's what's caused this. So I venture upstairs and check one attic. Nothing. So I go to check the other side, which is accessible from the roommate's closet. I open the door and the room is once again a disaster area. Everything from blackened shriveled banana peels to fast food bags to piles of dirty dishes and clothes. And bugs crawling over it. I, understandably, was a bit upset. Even the rabbit's cage was still there. Still filled with rabbit shit. I was confident she hasn't changed the litter from when she got back after Christmas to when the rabbit died. I told her flat or she needed to clean her room now today this instant because I wasn't going to have the upstairs of my house become a garbage dump. She wasn't exactly happy with me, but I didn't give a fuck at that point. I stormed out and left for a bit before I snapped and did something I would really regret. So, being my dumb self, I assumed that given the situation and context that the upstairs would then be cleaned. That I got the point across. So I go upstairs a few weeks later to change the air filter in the AC system and lo and behold, the room is not only still filled with the exact same shit it was before, there is new trash. I'm done at this point, I'm livid. I tell her when she gets home to clean the upstairs, pack her bags and get out by the end of the week. She gives me a song and dance and sob story and all about how it will never happen again. You're right, it won't, you're not staying here. No one should be surprised when they find out I still ended up having cleaned the upstairs. The carpet was a loss and the entire house had to be fumigated. I even had to repaint the walls to cover stains since nothing would get them off. I took pictures. There are episodes of Hoarders that looked cleaner. Story 14. Not actually my story, but a friend of mine had a pretty rough time on her first week of living in a new place with a bunch of guys. She originally wanted to rent with her friend, but unfortunately her friend pulled out of the university course at the local university they were attending together, so she ended up having to find somewhere to rent alone. She ended up renting a room in a house share with 4 other guys, also students. After the first week she informed them she was going to the shop and they asked her to pick up some toilet tissue for the house. Unfortunately she forgot and they were pretty upset about it. So the next day, after being out of the house all day, she came home to find her bedroom walls and bed sheets smeared in shit. It was their idea of teaching her a lesson about forgetting to get toilet tissue. Story 15. My freshman year, I had a crazy roommate. He was a bigger guy with a porn stash who thought all the women around him desired him. He tried very hard to make people like him, and failed miserably. He also had some shitty roommate habits. For example, he would set multiple alarms in the morning and not wake up when they went off, which forced me to get up and wake him up every time. It was a college dorm where we slept in the same room. He would also drive like 80 miles per hour on residential roads to try and impress people. Anyway. After 4 weeks of creeping everyone out in the hall and alienating himself, someone took his iPad as a joke. He freaked out and threatened multiple people, saying he would hack their computers and destroy their lives. Eventually someone told him his iPad was in one of my friend's rooms. He went inside, grabbed the guy, put a knife to his throat, and asked him where the iPad was. The cops came and he was expelled. But after that I didn't have to share my room the rest of the year, so that was cool.